Student accommodation floods the market. Let's have a look. Hello everyone, Florian.Heise here and welcome to another episode of HeiseSays. In this episode I thought we'd have a look at this article from Domain regarding student accommodation flooding the market. Now, this is something that I'm not at all surprised about with regards to student accommodation being, well, a significant investment with regards to our university education sector. You've got UTAS that have actually invested in there directly. And you've got a lot of people that are buying student accommodation or developing buildings targeting students because, well, generally they have decent money, they'll be here for a period of time, and it is a large sector. So, is anyone at all surprised that because, well, international students, even though they gave them all the little, stop off in another country for 2 weeks to get around any restrictions, will pay you to do that, all those get out of jail clauses and deals, is there any surprise that the demand for that product is decreasing? So those investments are going to start flooding back onto the market. What do you think, everyone? And these, have you been through these apartments? A lot of them are entirely managed apartments. They're pretty much little studios with micro kitchens that they're not even meant to cook in properly. Barely a hotel room, pretty much. Can you rent them out for other things? Can owner-occupiers even live in them? And they're pretty cheap, some of them. I'm thinking all the little tiny one-bedders in Brisbane. We'll have to see. So, student apartments listed for sale in inner Melbourne as hundreds sit empty during the illness pandemic. And I would bet a carton that this is a consistent thing throughout all cities in Australia, at least all the major cities where we have a substantial university presence. What do you think, everyone? Let me know if you've invested in these and if you've taken a hit. The inner Melbourne unit market has been flooded by student apartments listed for sale as hundreds normally occupied by international students sit empty due to the illness pandemic. Local and international investors are looking to sell because they are unable to get regular rent from students who would have ordinarily been studying at universities across the city, agents report. So it's not just local people selling, it's also international people selling. I can't say I'm at all surprised. If you even bought one of these for your kids to come here to Australia to study as an investment, they'll live there, then you'll rent it out afterwards. Dingle Partners director Robert Eggers said many would look to sell because the rent from student accommodation investments supplemented their income or superannuation. Some buildings were only available for students to rent, meaning other tenants were unable to fill the void, he said. So that's what I was talking about, where it's difficult for owner-occupiers to rent in them. There you go. There's another concern. There's a limitation on that market. And frankly, you don't want to be living in a student apartment if you're a pensioner. I can't imagine my mother living in a student apartment. You'd have trouble getting other tenants because, it's a student accommodation. They'll be well behaved, but there will be some parties there. There'll be lots of people going about. There'll be some atmosphere there, which is what you want as a student, which is completely fine. But it's going to limit the people that go there, and frankly, they probably can't anyway. At the moment in the market, they're probably looking to sell because that investment is part of their super fund or part of their income, Mr. Eggers said. Apartments that were managed by large companies specifically for students were individually owned, he said. And you've got a fair bit of costs with regards to that. They're the body corporates and all the fees, they're higher than other places because there's pool rooms, there's all these other facilities that the students have grown to expect, particularly if they're coming from overseas and they're spending a lot of money on accommodation. So, yeah, they're not cheap to hold these things. And some of them are small, they're really small. Data from Domain showed a massive surge in the number of 1- and 2-bedroom apartments listed for sale in Melbourne, with some suburbs up as much as 192%. There you go. There you go. The data was based on new listings in suburbs where students typically rent, including Southbank, where rentals were up 192% for March this year when compared with the same time last year. Now, that's the main issue with this is you can't just, if you're locked into a managed building targeting specifically students, only allowing students to come in there, you can't just say, okay, I'll cut the rent in half and go, a cheaper person, a worker. Because that opportunity doesn't exist anymore in the structure you've invested in. It's another element of risk. So there you go. New listings also rose in Melbourne, 93%, Clayton, 50%, and Carlton, 14%. It is estimated hundreds of student apartments have been left sitting empty since early February, when the Australian government banned travellers from China from entering the country as the illness rapidly spread. Now, this is another example of where we have industries here in Australia that are highly, highly dependent on China. The crayfish industry is one example. A lot of our natural resource exports is another example. Our tourism industry is another example. The university education and student accommodation is also another example. And honestly, I feel sorry for some of these students that are coming over here to the universities because they want to come over to learn English and hopefully get immersed in a foreign culture. That's part of the deal of university. That's part of traveling. But I remember from my days back at uni, there'd be so many people from their own country that just hang out, and then they'd have to, the smart ones would really make an effort to reach out and become friends with the Aussies or people from other cultures. It's a missed opportunity. But then, anyway, you had the ones where mummy and daddy paid for everything and they didn't care. They were just partying. I remember this one guy from Spain, and he was shocked at how much work we had to do here in architecture. And he said, I'm just here to party, not to do all this work. It's so hard. I thought it was quite funny. International students, including those from China, boost the Victorian economy by billions of dollars each year. In 2018, a record 281,000 international students enrolled in schools and universities in Victoria, generating $11.8 billion in export revenue. Now, let's compare that, guys. That's just Victoria. And what I'll do is I will bring up trading economics. I'll bring up the Observatory of Economic Complexity to just compare some other Australian exports. Now, 11.8 billion from Victoria. Our iron ore, 48 billion. Coal, 47 billion. So 4 times. A quarter of our iron ore, roughly quarter of coal. Gold is 29 billion. All the wheat in Australia. Victoria makes more money from just the international students in 2018 than all of our wheat. Double. Wheat is 4.8 billion. What about sheep and goat meat? 2.52 billion. Nearly 4 times that, 5 times that. Wool was only 2.7 billion. And Victoria, we're just talking Victoria, 11.8 billion. So you can see why this is a big industry. And then let's have a look at another one. Tourism at 60.8 billion, 3.1% of GDP. So that's for the whole country. So there you go. You can see how important this university sector is and just where it all flows through. That's why they're chasing these students. That's why these universities have become so dependent on their money. So dependent on their money. And I guess it's just from my experience seeing, if you talk to any academics who've been working for the last couple of decades, and just the increase in non-research and non-education staff in the universities, it's nuts. So all the support staff, all the additional staff that add, let's say, bureaucracy to the process, but may not actually help the academics fulfill their other roles. So it's frustrating to see. But, that's how it is. Chief Executive of Sky Sea International Group, Sunny Lu, Said vendors, even those who have owned student renting apartments for 10 years, were now selling up, scared the property market would drop as the illness lockdown continued. Because everyone is facing the illness and they need cash in hand, Miss Liu said. It seems to be that we're getting a different perspective on property that we've been getting in every other article, doesn't it? Doesn't it? Some owners may think the property market is going down and don't want to face drops of 30 to 40%. Well, if any sector in property is going to take a hit, a hard hit, it will be 1 and 2 bed apartments. Now, here I'll make a prediction. I'll put money. I'll put a carton on that this will be one of the hardest hit sectors in the property market. We're not talking blue chip property in well sought after suburbs. We're talking shoebox apartments targeting international students in the cities that are high, cost a lot to maintain. Ms. Liu said while more people were selling their student apartments in April than in previous years, she didn't believe the market in Australia will be majorly affected in terms of property prices. Sure, of course you don't. I don't think the prices will go down. It will be tough for 3 to 6 months, but after this illness is gone, the market will pick up so quickly. Really? We'll have to see. Do you think all the international students will instantly come back here? Here's another thing. If the US dollar depreciates against some of these Asian currencies more, do you think these people are going to come to Australia, the poor man's USA, or are they going to head to some of the prestigious universities over there? What do you think would carry more weight back home? Let me know your observations in the comments below. While more apartments were being listed, they were actually selling, with more than 30 sales in Carlton alone since January. Miss Liu said she recently sold a 2-bedroom apartment at Lygon Street, Carlton, in the College Square building for $330,000, the exact asking price. Buyers were normally a mix of local first home buyers or local and international investors from countries including Malaysia, Singapore and China, she said. Well, see, this is depending. This, obviously, a first home buyer couldn't get one in a student-only accommodation unless they were studying. Ray White Victoria Chief Executive Stephen Dullins agreed that there had been a lift in the number of apartments for sale in suburbs. There's been an increase in the terms from the norm, but not a huge increase, he said. What has been booming was the number of people looking to either rent out their apartments, which had previously been Airbnb accommodation, or for renters who were international students looking to stay in Melbourne, he said. Well, that's what he's saying. Before in the article, Domain started telling us listings went up 191%. A lot of them were student accommodation. And we've seen, Airbnb in Tasmania went up 500% or 300%? We looked at it in a previous article. It was crazy. They think Australia looks to be handling the illness really well. And even though they may not qualify for government benefits, they also may not get them at some of their countries like South America. So they want to stay, he said. Well, there you have it, guys. What do you think? What do you think? Do you reckon these will be good long-term investments? Or is it a bit risky in today's climate? What would you do? Would you sell or would you hold? I guess it all comes down to your time frame. Anyway, everyone, thank you all for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. If you're a fan and you want to support us, there are a few ways you can. You can join the channel either on Patreon or here on YouTube for a small monthly fee. You can share the content and help the channel grow. You can use our affiliate links at Amazon or eBay for your consumer purchases, or Independent Reserve and Kucoin for all your crypto trading. We have merch available from Teespring and HeiseSays, Gold Pass if you want to send us gold from Perth Mint, and PayPal if you want to contribute that way. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day. And I'll see you next time. Bye for now.